Have you ever had an object in your life that reminds you of someone you love or a place you've come from? Maybe it's a photograph, a toy, or even a piece of jewelry. Today I'm going to share a story about one such object, a lotus seed. This book is called The Lotus Seed by Garland, illustrated by Tatsuro Kiyuchi. I'll begin by reading the start of the book. My grandmother saw the emperor cry the day he lost his golden dragon throne. She wanted something to remember him by, so she snuck down to the silent palace near the river of perfumes and plucked a seed from a lotus pod that rattled in the imperial garden. She hid the seed in a special place under the family altar, wrapped in a piece of silk from the eye dye she wore that day. Whenever she felt sad or lonely, she took out the seed and thought of the brave young emperor. This opening positions the seed as a symbol. It is something precious, carrying meaning and memory. The story follows a young girl who becomes a grandmother, carrying the seed through war, migration, and her journey to a new land. Over time, it grows into a powerful motif of resilience, heritage, and hope. While the lotus seed is a narrative, it doesn't follow the traditional structure. Instead, its structure is episodic, unfolding like a memory, moving through key life moments that all connect to the seed. The quiet resolution comes when the seed germinates, signaling renewal and continuity. The story's key themes are resilience, migration, belonging, and cultural identity. The lotus seed symbolizes home and heritage, reminding the family of their connections as life changes. The story is told in first person through the granddaughter, who's retelling her grandmother's experiences. This layered point of view helps us see history through memory, while showing how traditions are passed down through generations. Garland's style is lyrical and poetic, using anaphora and short rhythmic sentences to create rhythm and place, while descriptive imagery paints vivid, memorable pictures. Tatsuro Kiyuchi uses muted greys and browns to convey war and displacement, while the bright pink of the lotus bloom signals hope. One of the most striking characters is the grandmother. She is presented as a figure of strength and quiet resilience. Through her actions, we see how she carries not just the seed, but the memory of her homeland and her determination to protect her culture. In the illustration, she is often shown in soft colours, reflecting both her gentleness and her endurance. The text moves from the grandeur of the imperial palace in Vietnam to rice fields and war-torn landscapes, then finally to unfamiliar spaces of a new country. Each setting reflects stages in the grandmother's journey. From loss to survival to rebuilding life, the contrast between old and new landscapes helps readers understand the dislocation and hope that is tied to migration. Let's look closely at this illustration. Here we see the grandmother handing the lotus seed to her grandchildren. Notice the warm, glowing colours that dominate the scene. The children's faces are filled with joy and curiosity, while the grandmother's posture is gentle and giving. Compositionally, the seed is at the very centre of the image, drawing our eyes straight to it. This shows us that the seed is a gift of culture, history, and memory being passed down to the next generation. The soft brushstrokes create warmth, showing that this is not a moment of sadness, but of renewal and connection. There are several lines to savour within the text. My favourites include "She kept the seed," an instance of anaphora that deepens meaning over time. The river of perfumes, whose sensory imagery builds a vivid sense of place. And the line about the lotus, "It is the flower of life and hope," which is an explicit symbolic cue that invites inference. This activity spotlights anaphora and symbolism. The focus line, "She kept the seed," is presented first for reader response, then named as anaphora that accumulates meaning across the text. from keeping a seed to keeping culture, memory, and hope. Pairs are then to classify short quotations as literal or symbolic, then co-create a mini word wall linking each word to evidence. Learning is checked with a one-sentence exit response, explaining how the refrain builds the theme. Materials are kept to a minimal in order to keep emphasis on literary thinking rather than busy work. This lesson develops narrative and perspective through a 150 to 200 word object micro memoir. A brief mentor paragraph demonstrates voice, imagery, and a simple time shifts. Students plan with 3 prompts. The object is, it reminds me of, when I hold it. The success criteria includes one sensory image, a clear voice, and cohesive structure. The task strengthens personal connection and links directly to the unit's ideas of memory, identity, and belonging. This oral component builds speaking and listening with story circles. In groups of 4, each student shares a 2-minute story about a meaningful object, while peers practice active listening through one clarifying question. Simple cue cards frame feedback so enjoyment comes first. The outcome targets confidence, audience awareness, and respectful acknowledgement of diverse backgrounds. To extend higher proficiency writers and deepen conceptual thinking, I would encourage the inclusion of flashbacks or layered perspectives, writing from both their own point of view and the imagined perspective of the object itself. This encourages students to think deeply about layered perspectives, symbolism, and empathy while creating depth. To support students, especially EALD, I would provide a scaffold with sentence starters and key vocabulary. They could also use drawing alongside words to represent their chosen object before writing, so that the activity remains accessible and meaningful. 2 texts pair well with the Lotus seed. First, The Journey by Francesca Sanna. This contemporary picture book follows a family fleeing conflict. With spare narration and boldly metaphorical images, it explores fear, courage, and hope. Like the Lotus seed, its themes are displacement, belonging, and cultural survival, inviting strong visual analysis. Second, The Little Refugee is an autobiographical picture book that tells An Do's story of fleeing Vietnam after the war and building a new life in Australia. It shares themes of migration, resilience, and belonging, and provides a child's eye perspective that Stage 3 students can strongly connect with. Together, they allow students to explore how literature represents personal and collective experiences of displacement in different ways. This story also aligns closely with Stage 3 HSIE history, particularly when exploring migration in Australia's past. A valuable activity would be for students to interview a family or friend about their migration story and then create a presentation linking past experiences with the present. This allows students to make meaningful personal connections to real-life experiences. In doing so, they begin to recognise that migration is not only a feature of Australia's history, but also part of many of their own family stories. Syllabus links, references.